The word prolific more than applies to television legend Norman Lear, the visionary behind any number of memorable TV shows. But prolific hardly conveys the pivotal role he played in transforming this medium. Norman Lear died in 2023 at 101 years old. His family stayed quiet for days planning something no one expected. 2 years later, the shocking truth came out. Behind his modest lifestyle was a secret art collection worth over $50 million. His Beverly Hills home was actually a private museum with masterpieces by famous artists. But that wasn't the biggest surprise. His $200 million estate came with conditions that stunned Hollywood. His 6 children couldn't just inherit the money. They had to earn it in ways that changed everything about family wealth. Norman Lear was born on July 27, 1922, in New Haven, Connecticut, into a home already marked by turmoil. His father, Herman Lear, was a hustler who dealt in fake bonds and schemes that promised more than they could deliver. When Norman was only 9, his father was sent to prison for fraud, leaving the boy to grow up fast. Visits to the prison, whispers at family gatherings, and the sudden expectation that he step into the role of man of the house shaped him deeply. Those early wounds never really left him. Years later, he would pour those experiences into characters like Archie Bunker, whose flaws and loud presence echoed the chaos of his own father. The lesson that the American dream could quickly turn into a nightmare came even earlier. Herman once opened a furniture store, collected advance payments from families, and then vanished with their money. Norman saw the fury of neighbors who had trusted his father and the humiliation that settled over his own family. It was not just a scandal but a brutal education. From that moment, Norman carried with him a sharp eye for the cracks behind authority and the dark side of ambition. That outlook would one day fuel his satirical television, where the surface of respectability was often stripped away to show what was hidden underneath. In 1942, at 20 years old, Norman joined the U.S. Army Air Forces to fight in World War II. He became a radio operator and gunner on Boeing B-17 Flying Fortresses, flying 52 combat missions across the Mediterranean. The danger was constant. Tail gunners often survived only a handful of missions. Yet Norman kept flying. He saw friends killed, watched the skies turn deadly with fire, and flew over towns scarred by the Holocaust. The hatred he witnessed left him with a lifelong mission to fight prejudice and bigotry wherever he could. The war hardened him, but also gave him the urgency that later showed in his writing. When the war ended, Norman came home searching for direction. He applied to USC's film school, certain it would open the door to Hollywood. Instead, he was rejected. With no other options, he began selling encyclopedias door to door. Seemed like failure, but the experience became training ground. Every knock on a stranger's door taught him how to read people in seconds, how to shape a story so it mattered, and how to win attention in a living room. He didn't know it at the time, but this work gave him the tools to connect with millions once he reached television. In 1945, broke and uncertain, he gambled almost everything he had left. With just $40 in his pocket, he bought a ticket to see comedian Danny Thomas perform in Miami. After the show, Norman somehow talked his way backstage and convinced Thomas to let him write jokes for $50 a week. It was a bold move that changed everything. That moment turned a struggling veteran into a writer whose work would one day shape American culture. His first big television job, though, nearly ended his career before it began. In 1950, Norman was hired to write for the variety show Ford Star Review. What should have been his breakthrough quickly turned into a nightmare. Variety complained that the show seldom hit top stride, and another critic said his sketches sank into mediocrity. The word unwatchable was repeated in reviews. NBC executives almost canceled the show and Norman considered giving up on television altogether. Still he stayed. That painful failure taught him resilience and the value of honest criticism, lessons that stayed with him for the rest of his life. Soon after, he and his partner Ed Simmons joined the Colgate Comedy Hour, writing for Dean Martin and Jerry Lewis. The duo was a sensation in front of audiences, but behind the scenes their partnership was crumbling. Norman saw the fights, the clashing egos, and the eventual breakup that ended one of the most famous acts in comedy. Watching that chaos gave him insight into how conflict could fuel creativity. He later used that same dynamic in shows like All in the Family and The Jeffersons, where characters with clashing views created unforgettable television. By the mid-1950s, Norman was writing for The George Goel Show. Here, he discovered something that would define his career. Safe, easy laughs got polite applause. But when a sketch pushed boundaries or made the audience uncomfortable, the laughter became louder and more lasting. Norman realized that comedy had more power when it told the truth, even when that truth was hard to hear. It was the start of what he called comedy with consequence, a style that would later revolutionize American sitcoms. In 1958, he learned how costly honesty could be. While writing for The Andy Williams Show, he slipped in jokes that criticized the lingering fear of McCarthyism. Network censors and sponsors quickly cut him off, and within months he was fired. For Norman, the firing was more than a lost paycheck. It confirmed that he would always clash with those who wanted safe, empty entertainment. He refused to back down, and that defiant spirit would become the heart of his career. Later that same year, he partnered with Bud Yakin to form Tandem Productions. At first, their work was dismissed as too real by networks that preferred polished, cheerful stories. But Norman and Bud refused to compromise. They wanted shows that reflected real struggles, not sugar-coated versions of life. That persistence eventually gave birth to All